Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. As I almost forget my mic to start this show, but it is the power of the pork roll has come to fruition in one of the craziest signings in the history of the New York Jets. One of the craziest days I've ever seen on social media, and a recruiting tactic that has certainly upped the ante for future free agents. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. The New York Jets, of course, signing Mike Williams this week, adding a true, legitimate number 2 wide receiver to the wide receiving core, and adding a true playmaker and someone that they have coveted, as Connor Hughes reported that years ago, the Jets would have loved to add Mike Williams before he was extended by the Chargers. And look, yes, there are risks with injuries, but another one-year deal for Joe Douglas. And once again, like Tyron Smith, the Jets now with the 10th pick can get really freaky. And when we said freaky on Tyron Smith, little did we know how freaky Jets Twitter was going to get. And I love you all. And I do want to say this for NYJ Matt, who had the great idea and who has gotten his fair share of fame this week, and rightfully so. NYJ Matt, congratulations. And I have two things right now. Number one, that pork roll should be renamed at the diner the NYJ Matt special. And if I'm the New York Jets, there better be a place at MetLife Stadium next year where I can get that sandwich on game day in that stadium. Because look, I am going to say this and go off a tangent. Breakfast sandwiches are a power move at any time of the day. Yes, you can get them in the morning, but you know it's even more satisfying when you bite into that beautiful egg, meat, and cheese on whether it's a bagel, whether it's a croissant, whether it's a nice roll in the afternoon, at evening. And look, I'm not going to lie, really good time to eat it late at night when maybe you've been out with the boys a little bit, maybe out with the friends. Really a good power move at the end of the night. Night breakfast is always the way to go. But let's get back to the brass tacks. This is the Jets signing Mike Williams. And look, I am really excited about this signing. I think he adds a great complement to this wide receiving room and really brings a nice dimension that the Jets didn't have last year and leaving Corey Davis. And look, Corey Davis, it's interesting now as the Jets, it's seemingly we're going to potentially have him back, but it's come out that Corey Davis is leaning toward maybe going back toward Tennessee, maybe going back closer to home. Again, had the mental health issues last year, hoping the best for him. And would it be frustrating if he left the Jets? Absolutely. But you get Mike Williams, who is an incredibly talented receiver. And look, if you were to ask people, if you were to put him on probably half the teams in the NFL, he could legitimately be a number one. And there is a lot of fun speculation. And look, it's been a fun week on Jets social media. It has been crazy. Whether you look at the impact NYJ Matt has had, the whole pork roll situation with Mike Williams. But another thing that set Twitter on fire was Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft. Now, Daniel Jeremiah has a close relationship with Joe Douglas, as we know. And he predicted and got freaky with the draft, saying 4 quarterbacks were going 1 through 4, which isn't shocking, especially with the news that the Cardinals have announced that they are looking to trade out of 4, which is not surprising to me. But what's surprising is that he had the Jets trading up for Marvin Harrison Jr. with the 5th pick. Now, a couple things have happened this week, including Marvin Harrison Jr. not participating in his pro day, which irks a lot of people. My opinion is, look, I think in the whole scheme of everything, pro days, combine, to me, it's more to get guys noticed later in the draft and maybe give you a little bit of a precursor to, like, say, I need to go watch that film again because of the athleticism that I'm seeing here and doesn't match what I've seen on the tape. Or maybe this isn't a guy we haven't paid enough attention to. Let's go back and look at the film and maybe we missed something here. But with pro days, I almost look at pro days as the following. It's getting through the bare basics, and also it's, to me, more important for players that are injured, players that are trying to prove to teams, hey, look, I am healthy. That knee injury I had in the fall, I'm 100%. That leg injury I had, I'm 100%. That arm injury, I'm 100%. That, to me, is really the biggest impact of the pro days, are really trying to focus on more of these day 2, day 3 picks to seeing how they fit in your system, how they respond to certain coaching. So for me, I know there's going to be a lot of freaky speculation about Marvin Harrison Jr. I will get to that. I will have a new mock draft on Monday for the Jets after all these signings, and it should definitely be interesting because, again, Mike Williams, like Tyron Smith, gives the Jets flexibility. And again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. If you're new to the channel, hit that like, give us a subscribe. Also, make sure to light up that chat section. We love to have you guys in here and get freaky with the chats. Of course, let us know if you have your comments, your questions about the New York Jets. We had a couple comments from earlier today in the live stream with Dakota J. First to comment, as always, LFG Jets. And look, he's big fan of Mr. Mike Williams. Mike is going to be a blockbuster trade down, and Chargers will get to pick and draft an OT, Fuanga. Here's the thing with the Marvin Harrison Jr. Dakota J, and I'm glad you brought it up because, again, and I'm trying to see if Dakota J is still in the chat right now. If he is, would love to have him back. But here's the biggest thing I look at with the whole Marvin Harrison Jr. trade because, yes, I get the appeal. Yes, I get on paper how it looks to get arguably what many consider the top player in the entire draft. But my biggest problem with it is the Jets still have some holes on this team, and I just don't see them selling out to get a receiver, even as talented as he is. The only player I could see the Jets trading up for in this draft is going all the way up to potentially get Joe Alt. And that's if Joe Alt's like at 6 or 7. Now, with the Smith signing, the Jets all of a sudden don't have to necessarily go out there and kill themselves to try to get a tackle. But if Joe Douglas feels that he is a generational left tackle that you're not going to see in years and that he is truly above and beyond everyone else and that he is going to be the blind sign protector for 12 years on the left side, then I do think you have to be aggressive. You have to go out there and you have to add him if you feel he's that talented of a player. But Marvin Harrison Jr., the biggest other problem I see too is this is such a loaded draft at wide receiver. I think the Jets would be more content at pushing back and getting picks. I'm of the opinion, and I think my mock draft might reflect this, that I think the Jets are going to try to trade down from 10. My thing is I actually hope the Jets are hoping that maybe there's a guy that falls to 10 that makes that pick a lot more valuable. Some examples are Brock Bowers is the obvious choice at 10. But could one of the top 3 receivers, like if Odunze is there at 10, could a team get desperate and trade up because of the good value there for that team? Could even someone, like if we're looking at the left, Olufushano, if Olufushano falls to 10, which is a possibility, and I know I was saying screaming and running up that pick as soon as you get it, but if the Jets feel that they can get a really good tackle and get some more picks back in this loaded draft, I'm okay with it. And the biggest thing I see with the Jets now with this Mike Williams trade is all of a sudden, if Mike Williams wasn't on his team, you almost feel like the Jets, okay, maybe they have to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. because of this receiving core. But all of a sudden, now you add Mike Williams and you add a guy who makes everyone a little better. So now you feel as Allen Lazard is your 3rd or 4th receiver. And again, I think the Jets are going to try to trade him. I don't think they'll be successful. You feel a lot better. You feel a lot better with Xavier Gibson being your 4th or 5th receiver on this team. If Corey Davis does come back, you feel better about him potentially being a rotational player. I mean, you feel a lot better, and I almost think the Jets are done in free agency. There's a chance they bring in OBJ. There's a chance they still bring in Boyd. There's still a chance because the Jets have signed really good one-year deals that they can go out and still add another veteran presence, and I wouldn't be shocked. And look, the Jets met with Jadeveon Clowney in this week. Now, I know a lot of fans are a little panicked because he has left the facility, but Jadeveon Clowney has also put it out there that it went really well, but he's someone that likes to wait. I think he kind of wants to wait until after the draft. I don't think he's going to rush. I mean, last year, don't forget, he didn't sign until August. I would be shocked if he doesn't sign right around the draft. Like, I think he's going to he has a mark at 9.5 sacks. I'm really curious to see what happens with him. Could Clowney potentially come to the Jets? And look, if he comes to the Jets, I also think that impacts their draft because I wouldn't put it out that I wouldn't put it past the Jets, especially if they traded back and got a 2nd round pick. I wouldn't be shocked if they are still looking to add a pass rusher in the top 2 days of the draft. I mean, I know a lot of Jet fans would get furious with that, but this is a team that, if you look at their defensive line, the one common trait that all those players have is they are first or second round talent players. They were taken in those rounds for a reason, and they value high end draft picks. And I know people hate the Will McDonald pick from last year, but if it's the second round, the Jets feel that there's a top 20 player in the draft that happens to be a pass rusher, don't be surprised if they take a pass rusher. I mean, they're still looking at pass rush. They're always going to look at pass rush, especially to look for guys that they can develop. And I also don't think you got real tackle. I know if Odunze is there and Brock Bowers is there and the Jets can't trade out and they take a tackle, I do think there might be a small mutiny among Jet fans, but I'm fine with taking a tackle because as much as I love the moves that they have made, I am still concerned about this offensive line because in a perfect world, yes, you get Tyron Smith to play 13, 14 games. Yes, Morgan Moses goes out there and plays 17 games in the season. Yes, AVT is finally healthy. But the fallback we've seen before. We've seen it the last 2 years. We've seen the Jets' offensive line go through these woes, and now all of a sudden the Jets have this ability to potentially trade out of those picks and get an extra second-round pick. And I would even go a step further. If the Jets trade back and drafted a tackle in the first round, you know what also wouldn't shock me? If they drafted another one in round 2 or round 3. And I know people saying, well, don't they have Carter Warren? Don't they have Max Mitchell? Yes, but as we've learned, you can never have enough offensive linemen. In a perfect world, they don't play, and that means the Jets are having a great freaking season. But the Jets also have shown that their offensive line cannot stay healthy. And this season will get derailed by two things. Rodgers getting hurt again, but that goes to the second thing, which is the offensive line gets hurt and plays terrible. Because if they play terrible, there's a better chance Aaron Rodgers is going to get hurt. And look, I like what they've done. Simpson's a good player. I think Fant's a good player. Smith, obviously, a Hall of Famer. But there are also guys that are starting to get a little long in the tooth. You're looking at your tackles. You're both on one-year deals. I know that this is a win all year for the Jets, but I do think Douglas, and part of his plan is he wants to have some continuity and have a long-term plan in place. I do think the Jets are going to draft the quarterback in this draft. Probably early day 3. If it falls perfectly to them, maybe round 3 if there's a guy that they really value, but I don't see that realistically happening. But I'm just looking, I mean, the Jets are still going to quarterback pro days. They're still checking out all these quarterbacks. But the biggest thing that this does is it gives the Jets flexibility. It gives them flexibility for their cap next year. They're not into really bad contracts. It gives them flexibility in this draft where all of a sudden, if Odunze is there 10, and I know there's a certain amount of, and I'm just waiting for the comments to come in saying, if the Jets pass on Odunze, I'm done. Like, I get that. But if there's a team that is desperate for a true number one receiver and will overpay you to come up and get that guy, I think you got to consider it. I really do. Because, like, I'm looking at teams right now. I think Minnesota and Denver have made it clear that they're going to be looking for quarterbacks. But could I see a team like Indianapolis at 15 who, yes, they have Michael Pittman, but they need to make Anthony Richardson work? If Odunze's there, could Indianapolis pick up the phone and say, hey, we have the 46th pick. We can give you that along with 15 so we can come up and get your guy, our guy. I mean, another team I could maybe see making a move up into that area. Could Cincinnati at 18? Now, historically, Cincinnati's not a team that likes to move. But when you look at all the receivers they've lost, could they come up, especially if, let's play the hypothetical, Olufushano's there at 10. Could the Bengals go, look, we need a left tackle, protect our franchise quarterback. We will trade a boatload of picks to get up there. 17 with Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville just lost their number one receiver. They need to add some more weapons. Yes, they have Travis Etienne, who's great, but they need to make Trevor Lawrence work there. Moving from 17 to 10, I do think they're in range for that. So I think there's a lot of teams in that teens range, maybe even like the early 20s that are going, you know what? Maybe if we overpay to go get a receiver, it might be worth it. Like maybe it's worth it for the Jets, especially if I'm the Jets, I'm trying to stay in the sweet spot between picks 11 and 20. I wouldn't go all the way back until the 20s, but I'm looking at the teams around them. I do think Minnesota and Denver are going to take a quarterback. I look at the Raiders. I think the Raiders are a bit of a wild card, but I don't think they're going to take a receiver. I mean, Indianapolis, Odunze could make sense. Jacksonville makes sense. Cincinnati makes sense. I mean, the Rams, I don't think would take a receiver, but maybe they might come up to 19 to take a tackle. They're at the 19th pick. So it gives the Jets options. And look, even the Steelers at 20, maybe they want to give Russell Wilson a legitimate number one, and they can trade up 10 picks to go and get him. So the biggest thing for the Jets, though, is as long as they have guys that they can have on the board that you can trade down with, it is very appealing. And as much as I think guys want them to go up and get Marvin Harrison Jr., and as much as I would love that idea, like I would love pairing those two together, I just think that there's more problems with trading up to get him. Number one, I think that the assets the Jets have aren't going to make that much. Because, like, let's play the scenario. We'll do the Daniel Jeremiah method. Okay. Wow, Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at 5. Joe Douglas, let's pick up the phone. Let's call the Chargers. All right. Hey, Jim, this is what we'll give you. We'll give you pick 10. We'll give you our third rounder. We'll give you next year's first. Do we have a deal? I just think that the response is going to be a little bit of chuckle and saying, that's it. Because I have teams that are giving me a second this year and maybe a first next year, or a team that's giving me their 1, a 2, and a 2 next year. Like the Jets, to me, bare minimum, if they're going to go from 10 to 5, it's going to have to be the third round pick this year and a 1. Or maybe it could be a combo like next year's 1 and 3. It is going to be a lot to get up there. And here is another big problem with that whole scenario in the draft. You already have that elite wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. You're going to have to pay Garrett Wilson in a short amount of time. Let's say Marvin Harrison is what we expect. He's phenomenal. How are you going to afford to keep both of those receivers, especially if you're paying a franchise quarterback? You can't. I mean, look at the Bengals. The Bengals, yeah, it worked for a while, but now they got to pay Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow's been paid. They can't keep all those receivers. Like, name me a team that has a ton of money invested in the wide receiver position that is truly great. The one team I can think of is the Seattle Seahawks, because they have a lot in DK. They have a lot in Tyler Lockett. And I know they drafted a receiver last year, but I think part of the reason was so they could hopefully try to get out of the Lockett contract eventually. Like, you look at receivers right now, they are getting paid as franchise players, and you probably can only pay one. And you already have one of those guys. So I just don't see them doing that. And Dakota, like, look, I get where Dakota's coming from. I know a lot of Jet fans got excited. And if they did do that, I would be excited. I just think that there's too many problems with trading up, because then all of a sudden you make that trade. Great. Wait a minute. We now don't have another pick until day 3. And at that point, we're crossing our fingers and we're crossing our toes, hoping we can get a tackle. To me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. To truly be successful, we need to bring back the Tyree Black, Vincent Smith combo. Yeah, that was a great wide receiving group, RJF Media. Good to see RJF Media. Hope everything has been going well. All right, let's see. Surf Foul Player, Brooklyn, Big Rich, although I think you got a bigger chain, though, right there, Sir Brooklyn. I mean, I love that chain. I'm hoping that's like a Jet logo at the end of it, but that is a sick chain. Look, got to give you props, man. Looking good. Hey, you look good, feel good, play good. I've been talking about Edge, Javon Solomon from Troy for a little while now. I love him in the 4th. Same build as Huff, over 30 career sacks and tackles for loss, including 60 last year. Yeah, like that to me is what you got to look for, RJF Mia. Although the one thing I will say is the Jets are scheduling a meeting with Jordan Travis today, the quarterback from FSU. And I do think if you're going to draft him, it's probably going to have to be the 4th round, maybe in late 3rd round. I think that he kind of fits perfectly with what the Jets are this year. He's going to be a redshirt quarterback. Like, especially this year, I think it makes a lot of sense. They can see him for a year, and if they don't see anything, they can try to draft another quarterback next year. Like, that to me is what I think of that. But I do love that Solomon. Look, the Jets are going to take an edge. The Jets are going to take an edge, and my prediction is they're going to swing on an edge with a lot of upside on day 3 because, and here's my thing with this staff. If they're going to take a swing on defensive edge, I feel comfortable. If they take a defensive player late on day 3, I have a feeling they can develop him because they develop guys like Michael Carter. They've developed guys like Adams, who was undrafted. Like, I trust the defensive staff here to turn maybe a CC plus player into a B player. Like, they can get the most out of him and they can progress him. Offense is different. Offense, you just got to get a great player because let's face it, this offense outside of Aaron Rodgers, you ain't maximizing that talent. So I do love Javon Solomon. I think he would be a good fit. And look, Troy has a history. I mean, Troy's already put a Hall of Famer at the pass rush position in the NFL before. So maybe they're due for another one. So I think that is definitely something to keep an eye on. I would really look. I almost feel like with Douglas, like I always look for patterns, especially on my mock drafts. The pattern with Joe Douglas is, unless it's a really standout defensive player, he's not drafting them in the first 2 days. Like, he waits for day 3, and day 3 is the day they go with a lot of the defense. Like, if you look historically, most picks on those days have been defense. I mean, there's obviously the exceptions. Jermaine's the exception. Sauce is the exception. But there's a great defensive player in the first or second round, they'll get him. But I do think they'll prefer to get someone on day 3. I also wouldn't throw it past them, too. Like, I played with this scenario. If the really good pass rusher for Alabama, if they trade back, like, let's say to 15, and he's somehow there at 15, and I know we all want to tackle, but if the Jets see him being a guy that's going to be a 12 to 15 sack guy as an edge rusher, and you traded back and you got an extra pick out of it, I wouldn't rule that out either, because I think there's going to be such a run on offense in this draft that there's going to be some really great defensive players that fall, and maybe the Jets can take advantage of that. Rich, do you think we can get rid of Lazard contract, or will he be receiver 3? I think he's going to be receiver 3 next year. Who's taking Alan Lazard? I mean, the Jets overpaid for him. And I think the other good thing, too, is you're seeing that Joe Douglas is the GM. Because I also think he wanted to make a statement this offseason, because last year it was like, well, Aaron Rodgers is the defuncto GM. Well, I think it's pretty clear that, yes, these are guys that Rodgers probably also wanted, but it's not like a list. It's not former Packers. Like, if it wasn't like the Jets only got Bakhtiari, only got Runyon from brought all the former Packers in to here, although who knows, maybe Aaron Jones. Oh, no, Aaron Jones signed. Like, they didn't bring in Aaron Jones. So to me, I think the Jets may kind of, they try to get the best players who they think Rodgers would like, but also they think were just the best players available. Look, Alan Lazard, I think, is just a situation where if you're going to trade him, the best scenario isn't now. To me, what's going to have to happen is the following, which is you keep him on this roster, unfortunately, which I know the Jets want to get him out before June 1st. But I just don't think you're going to get the value. Like, I don't even think you're going to get a 7th-round pick right now because of the contract. But the one thing is, if the season starts and the Jets are healthy and a team gets decimated at receiver with injury and they look at it and go, well, we have to pay Lazard a ton of money, but we get out of it after this season, we can eat that contract this season. Like, to me, if you're going to trade him and get any okay value, it's going to be next year during the midseason to a team that desperately needs a receiver. And look, Alan Lazard was bad last year. You can't defend it, but maybe when he's not the focal point number 2, maybe with less pressure on him to really perform, maybe he'll rebound. Maybe he'll be able to be a better player. Maybe with better quarterback play and Aaron Rodgers, who he's familiar with, maybe he'll be a better player. I'm not saying a great player, but he could probably be a serviceable player, and then the Jets can get out of that contract up next year. And that's one thing you like about this team is after next season, they have a lot of flexibility again. Like Joe Douglas, I know people love to hate on him, but one thing he does is he doesn't put this team in cap hell and make it so they can't make moves. I'd like to sign Boyd too. He's durable, high-end slot, 6'2" guy. They don't grow on trees. Let's also prioritize tackle in the draft. I think they're going to go tackle in the draft. I'm going to do my next mock on Monday, and I'll get more into it there. I would love Boyd. The question is going to be the contract, and the question is going to be how many years, because it's been a lot of one-year contract. I think he's going to want a multi-year deal. I'd love to add Boyd to this team. I just get this feeling it's going to be Odell because Rodgers has talked about playing with Odell, and I think it's just going to come down to price because there's not a lot of cap space left. And for me, it's going to kind of be like what Williams signed for. I think it's going to be with Odell, a low cap hit, highly incentivized one-year contract where if you play this amount, if you get X amount of touchdowns, X amount of catches, you get that. Like it might be like a $3 million hit against the cap, but could be up to $13 million in bonuses. Like that's what I think. I think Boyd doesn't want that. I think he wants a full year, not fully guaranteed. Sorry, I'm getting the words mixed up. I think he's going to want a more traditional contract, like multiple years, certain guarantees in the money. And right now, I don't think the Jets want to do that. And I think OBJ might be willing to do that. And the other thing, too, is I think the Jets might also at this point want to wait it out because, yeah, I think that their biggest priority is getting Jadeveon Clowney because if they get Clowney, then maybe they don't have to draft another edge in this draft or don't have to wait until very late in the draft. Where I think the Jets are also maybe a little hesitant with Boyd is you look right now, there doesn't seem to be a market for a lot of these receivers. And if the Jets don't feel he's going to sign with anyone, maybe it behooves the Jets to wait. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of these veteran receivers not get signed because this is such a deep wide receiver class. Like Dane Brugler, who's someone I highly respect in this industry, out of 75 players, 14 are wide receivers on his big board. I think the NFL is looking at we can get younger receivers, we can get more dynamic players, and we can get guys on cheaper contracts in the draft. And to me, that's what the Jets might be waiting for because a scenario could fall to the Jets where let's play devil's advocate. Maybe they love Odunze. Maybe Odunze's there at 10 and they're like, look, we need a tackle, but we think he's one of the top 3 players in this entire draft. We have to take him. Or maybe it's a scenario where they trade back in the first round and they get the second round pick. And in the second round, they go, we have a first round grade on this wide receiver and we don't have to pay him. He doesn't have to come in and be one of our number 1 or 2 wide receivers right away. It's a great fit. Like if you bring in Boyd, yeah, you can draft a receiver, but then all of a sudden you start looking at the numbers and going, well, Lazard's on this team because we can't get rid of him. We have Boyd, we have Williams, we have Garrett, but we also need to keep Gibson because he's our punt returner. And then we're probably going to need another 6-man. Like, can they do special plays? Like if they draft another receiver, it might be hard with the roster gymnastics next year. So I do think that I would love to see Boyd, but I almost feel like it's going to be a secondary market. It's going to be, and in some ways, I think some of these receivers might be better off waiting until after the draft because maybe a team that was planning on getting a receiver or 2 in the draft, maybe they miss out. Maybe the guys they wanted got picked before them, and then all of a sudden the draft's over and they're looking around going, well, we need receivers, a little bit of desperation, and some of these receivers get overpaid. Like I can almost see that where Boyd doesn't sign. Maybe the Jets can't trade out at 10. They say, look, we're not going to be able to get that receiver in round 2 or 3 that we really wanted, so we can go and get Boyd. Like that to me is how I think a lot of this wide receiver market is going to play out. I want Bowers on this team in the worst way. I think he's more than just a tight end, but I do understand wanting to draft an OT regardless of 10. RJF Mia, I respect the take, and I love the logo, by the way. Great job. Like I might need to hire you to design my logo or give me some design tips. Like if you hire out for designing logos, let me know because that's a great logo. But I've been on the record about this Bowers. I don't know if you've seen me talk about this RJF Media about Bowers, but I would love Bowers too. Here's my problem with Bowers. Who's the offensive coordinator? Like to me, I just look at it this way. Like if you had like Johnson in Detroit, for example, he's innovative. He moves the tight end around. He knows how to utilize the tight end. And that's why you saw Laporta had that breakout season last year. Meanwhile, I look at Atlanta. I think Kyle Pitts is one of the top 3 most gifted tight ends in the NFL, but they don't know how to use him. They didn't know how to line him up correctly. And really, when I look at him, you need an offensive coordinator and someone that's going to be creative. And even Aaron Rodgers, who I think can make him a good player, is not necessarily a creative guy. We've seen him. He doesn't love a lot of motion. He likes to get to the line in the formation and then adjust the play from there. And I just don't see, like, to me, Bowers is a guy you need to have in motion, move him to the slot, move him all around. And are the Jets going to line up as a receiver? Again, Bowers to me is a lot of fun because with his size, you can think of this matchup: Williams on the outside, you put Bowers outside, and then you put Garrett Wilson in the slot. I mean, that could be a fun opportunity for this team. But the other thing I want to say with this too is I get the tight end room isn't the best in the league, but the Jets have solid tight ends. I think Conklin's a really good receiving tight end. I do think you're seeing Jeremy Rucker, once he got playing time, was an ascending player. I don't think the Jets tight end room is bad. Again, is it like one of the best in the league? No. Is it going to carry this team? No, but it's almost like people are acting like there's nothing in the cupboard there. And I do think you have some good ingredients with the two guys you have. The thing I would just say, though, is for the Jets to be successful, this is what I would say about Bowers. I think that the Jets can be a really good team without Bowers. I don't think the Jets are going to be a good team if this offensive line is in shambles. And if it requires you overdrafting maybe a player at 10 because you can't trade down. I mean, I said it. In a perfect world, let's say the Jets draft a tackle and they never play. I know fans might get frustrated with that, but you know what that means? It means Tyron Smith was healthy, AVT was healthy, Fant was healthy, and they played every single game. But we've all seen the last 2 years how unlikely that is to be. So if I'm the Jets, what can derail the season? Like I said, it's two things. Rodgers getting hurt, but what also impacts Rodgers getting hurt? It's the offensive line play. The offensive line plays good. It reduces the amount of chances for injuries for Aaron Rodgers. If the Jets' offensive line is bad, they're not going anywhere. Yeah, they could have all these great Corvettes that they have at wide receiver and Bowers, but if we're here in week 5 again and we're looking at Eric Warren starting at left tackle and Simpson struggling a bit because he has Carter Warren next to him and not a Hall of Fame left tackle. AVT gets nicked up again. Max Mitchell has to come in and play guard, or Connor McGovern is back on this team, or Wes Schweitzer's playing guard. All of a sudden, you're like, yeah, you don't feel as good about this offensive line, where there's a certain player who I think would be not the most talented player for the Jets, but I think he's the perfect player for the Jets to draft in this draft. And I think you could get him by trading down, but if they took him at 10, I also wouldn't be upset. And I will definitely get to that once we do that. How would you grade free agency thus far? I'm down to trade back and recoup picks. What's up, Melvin? Good to hear from you. I mean, look, I think you got to give it pretty much an A. I mean, even like the Javon Kinlaw contract, which we all were killing when the numbers actually came out, you're like, oh, that really isn't that bad. I mean, look, I guess let me rephrase that. I'll say A- because of the Huff deal. But the thing is, I think the Jets are a better team now than they were at the start of free agency because of the offensive line and the receiver that they added. And look, I think the biggest thing, the underrated signings are you brought back Zerline, you brought back Morstead. I think you got to try to bring Hardy back because he's such a good special team player. I mean, the biggest thing, too, is can you make supplemental moves? Can you add another receiver? Can you maybe sneakily add a tight end? Could you add a defensive player no one's talking about? And look, I think the safety market, too, is also fascinating. I think the Jets need to add another safety because from all indication, Ashton Davis isn't likely going to be back because he wants a chance to start. I do think the Jets have a good chance to bring him back because I just don't see a team handing him a starting job. And here at the Jets, I think he would have a very big role or a chance to start. I mean, look, if they got Clark coming back, they have Adams, I think are two solid safeties. I would like for them to add at least another for depth. I mean, they've basically blitzkrieged the tackle market where my Chris Jenkins mock is pretty much dead because I was like, they didn't even look at defensive tackle, but they have really invested in that position in the offseason. I would have to say, minus, because again, I just, You know what? I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to give it a B plus. And I know people are going to say harsh, Melvin. Here's my B plus. I think the Huff situation was handled poorly. And this is a good example of I think the Jets should have tagged him and traded him because you see what pass rushers went for. You saw at the bare minimum, you're basically getting a second and a fifth. And if the Jets had a second and a fifth, it changes the whole equation because all of a sudden now at 10, maybe they can get really frisky. Like the whole Marvin Harrison Jr. thing. If you had a second round pick and you traded a 1 and a 2 and next year's 2 to go up to 5, it feels a lot better. But they don't have those assets because they didn't use them on Huff. And look, I think the amount of money Huff got wasn't horrible, but the Jets had to allocate that to the offensive line, which they did, and the wide receiver room, which they did. They had to address this team. And look, they lost one of their strengths, but they also addressed their biggest weaknesses on this team. Like, even without Huff, I think the Jets today are a better team than they were at the end of last season. And that's even excluding Aaron Rodgers, because I think they've upgraded the backup quarterback position. They've upgraded wide receiver 2. They've upgraded right tackle. They've upgraded left tackle. They've upgraded, or at least kept the same level left guard, but you can argue they upgraded because they're paying that left guard probably the same production, but a lot less money. And they also added a lot of depth and young talent to the interior defensive line, which is a position that I've really been saying was a position they needed to address. Like they patched a lot of holes, and that's what's exciting because now the Jets aren't pressured to overdo something at 10 because they aren't desperate for a position. It's not like last year where they were desperate for alignment, and because of it, they got screwed. RJ Mia is right. That is a great logo, of course, man. That is. I agree with you, but the Jets brass had Michael Mayer ranked high last year, and we know Bowers is way better than him. A part of me also I have a theory on that. Again, I know that video came out with the audio. Like because again, like they didn't put Broderick Jones on that, but like they didn't have Jones really on that list. I mean, Mayer, look, is a really good player, but here's my thing. That list also said they had Mayer, McDonald. Well, they had the chance to draft them both, and they took McDonald. And Mayer, you can make the case, would have had more of an impact and would have made more sense last year. And look, I get the Brock Bowers love affair, and I get the idea of having that type of player, but the two big concerns I have are, number one, if you don't add offensive line depth and we get injuries early, the Jets are screwed. But more importantly, to me, Bowers is a unicorn, and you have to have a coach that is both innovative and designs plays specifically for him. We know that Nathaniel Hackett isn't that guy. I mean, there were complaints last year that they weren't getting Garrett the ball enough. This is an offensive coordinator that didn't realize, apparently until the Giants game, that Breece Hall can catch passes out of the backfield. So you're telling me that guy is going to figure out how to use Brock Bowers? That guy. No. Like that, like to me, and that's the frustrating part, because it's like, I love Bowers. I just don't trust this offensive staff to get the most out of him. Of what number? OT. Yeah, it's going to be offense. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a tackle. I really do. Like I would even throw this out there. If Odunze is there and Bowers is there at 10 and it came down to the two of them, even though I think Bowers is a slightly more intriguing prospect and maybe has a little bit higher ceiling, I almost think the Jets would go Odunze because he feels safer, because you know he can line up as a receiver. He can line up in the system and be a great player. Bowers, you're kind of like, okay, we have to line him up outside because he's not really a traditional tight end. He's a bit smaller. I have to play him a little bit more wide receiver. And I just don't think the Jets, unfortunately, are a team that's going to be innovative enough to do that. I just don't see it. It's puzzling. Yeah, it's Melvin. It's weird. Like I'm not going to lie. It is a pretty weird situation. I also don't want to kill. I also don't want to kill one of those guys. And it's just, I just don't see, man, I just don't see why, to me, pro days are more of, it can hurt you than help you. it's just I just think that he's by far and away the best part. The problem with this whole situation is it comes off that he seems entitled, and I do think it could rub people the wrong way. But the other thing too is a pro day isn't going to really tell you what you don't know about him. I mean, he's got some of the best film we see. We know he's an elite player. I mean, could this maybe turn a team off and maybe he becomes the second receiver off the board because guys are worried about the character issue? Sure, but I just get this feeling that's a little overblown. And look, I still think he's going to be the first receiver off the board. It's weird, but again, I still think he's going to be the first player off the board. Yeah, like I get playing devil's advocate for Bowers, but I just feel like the best thing for the Jets is trade down and draft one of these developmental tackles. I have one in mind. We'll do that in my next mock draft. But look, I just think the best thing for the Jets is if Bowers is there and Odunze are one of these top three receivers. Because if they're there, and I'll even go a step further if Fashanu's there. I think there's a chance he could be there now. And if he's sitting there at 10, and I know a lot of Jet fans, if you were telling me a month ago, I'd say run the card up. But if he's there and there's a team that looks at him and says, we have to have him be our day one starting left tackle, I mean, we looked at the trade the Miami Dolphins got for Laramie Tunsil. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to get that, but maybe it's a trade that not only impacts your draft this year, but maybe puts you in a good spot next year. Maybe there's a team that says, look, we'll give you this year's, we'll trade back, we'll give you this year's 2, and we'll give you a future 2 next year. So the Jets come in with more draft capital next year. I don't think the Jets would do that, would also be open to that as well. Kevin, what's the over-under for Knicks in a second? I like Knicks a lot. Problem is they need a second-round pick. The hard part is going to be with Knicks and a lot of these quarterbacks that are kind of these fringe second-rounders is how bad does a team want them and how much they believe in him. Because if you have a high second-round grade on a quarterback, I think that makes him a first-rounder. Because the way the draft is, once you get past like pick 25, I think the talent level really evens out. There isn't a huge drop between players at that point. So a lot of these teams, if they get the opportunity to trade back, they will. And if you're a team that's looking for a quarterback and you believe Bo Nix can be a great quarterback, you're trying to get him in the first round. Yes, it puts the first round distinction on him, puts more pressure on him. But more importantly, as an organization, it gives you that fifth-year option. Because the worst thing you can have is if you draft a guy in the second round, you kind of saw with the Eagles. They had to pay Jalen Hurts early because they didn't have that fifth-year option. That fifth-year option gives you an extra year of financial control and not overpaying a quarterback. And if you hit on that guy, all of a sudden then, like if Bo Nix doesn't play a snap this year, and let's say by the end of year 2 next year, he's ready to go and the Jets believe in him, you have a quarterback for 3 years, you're not paying a lot of money. And that helps you when you want to keep guys like Sauce Gardner, when you want to keep guys like Breece Hall, when you want to keep guys like Garrett Wilson. I just feel that if the Jets are going to draft a quarterback, it's going to be in the 4th round. Because, yes, they are looking at guys like Bo Nix. Yes, they're doing their due diligence on the top quarterbacks. But one of the biggest things is, like, I look at the 30 visits very importantly because, to me, it's almost like a job interview. It shows how interested in. They're interviewing Jordan Travis from Florida State. And I've been on the record saying, to me, I think that is the best fit for him. And I also think it's the best fit for the Jets because he's coming back off that injury. It almost feels like he just needs this to be a retro year, kind of like Hendon Hooker was last year. And if you're the Jets, you already have your backup for the next 2 years. You already have Aaron pretty much committed to 3 or 4 years, but who knows? Let's just get through a year and see where we are. But that could be a good thing where you have a kid that can come in as a third-string quarterback without the pressure of worrying about playing this year and knowing you have 2 veterans in front of him, knowing you have a great locker room guy in Tyrod Taylor who everyone raves about to be kind of the guy that grooms you. Because, yeah, Aaron Rodgers might help you out, but Aaron Rodgers is a starting quarterback. And it's not his job to get the next quarterback ready. But Tyrod Taylor could be a great situation for him to just sit on the bench, show the kid what he's seeing out there, how things are breaking down. Look, I think it'd be a good opportunity for the Jets. I do. I just think Bo Nix is a little too high in this draft, and I just don't think he's going to be available. I think Minnesota's going to get up early. I think they're going to get up until, the Cardinals today basically said that they're open to trading the 4th pick. Why would they do that? They're basically telling guys, hey, give us your best offer. And I think there's one team they're kind of winking at, and that's Minnesota. Because again, Minnesota made that trade where they got that extra first-round pick. So they have 11 and 23. And all of a sudden, you look at Arizona. Arizona has the 27th pick as well. They might feel really frisky and go, if they trade back with Minnesota, think of this. If they trade back, Arizona, if they make this trade with Minnesota, and this is just in the first 2 rounds, they trade for those 2 first-round picks, all of a sudden, you look, they would have 11, they'd have 23, but oh, wait, they also have the 27th pick in this draft, and also they have pick number 35. They can do a lot with 4 picks in the top 35. They could get an impact offensive lineman, a weapon, potentially a great defensive player. I mean, that is a way to reload a team very quickly. I just feel like Arizona is also saying, look, we're open to business, especially if New England somehow doesn't take a quarterback at 3. We're open. We're open to hearing offers because you can't tell me teams are kind of already hearing the rumors about the Giants. I mean, Giants a couple weeks ago came out. They're looking to trade up. I think that 3 and 4 are going to be fascinating because I'm also of the opinion, too, that New England might want to trade down. I mean, I would also look at Minnesota and New England. I just get this feeling that New England wants to do the Patriot way. I mean, that you look, it's basically the Belichick tree. And what's Belichick? You should sit and learn behind a veteran. They got their veteran, Jacoby Brissett. I don't think they want to spend a premium draft pick, but if you go down to 11, could you get like a Michael Penix maybe there? Sure. Could you still get a good quarterback and later in this first round who's not pressured to sit like Bo Nix in the 20s? Sure. Like, I think that there's options for the Patriots and the Cardinals. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I really do believe that I think Minnesota is going to get into the top 5. I mean, you don't go out and make that trade with the Texans to get the 23rd pick if you're not serious. I think that they are loading up, and now all of a sudden, when you look at picks and you look at the way the board is falling, if they get to 11, you're going to get a blue chip player. There's a chance you're going to get either one of the top 2 tackles, you're going to get one of the top 3 receivers, you get Brock. But like, could you imagine this power move hypothetically? Could you imagine if the Cardinals trade back to 11, draft Bowers at 11 for Kyler Murray, and then still have all those picks to fill out the holes on their team? I mean, that to me could be how you handle your assets and really do a good job of asset allocation in this draft. So, another interesting thing too is like Carl Lawson, of course, tweeting last year, great player, but tell the whole story, basically, posting videos of him beating up on Trent Brown. And here's the thing. If Carl Lawson is healthy, I think he could be a good player. And look, I also would look, if I'm the Jets, if you can get, because the Jets are already paying him for next year. If they can get him on a league minimum, like, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back as a rotational piece. I mean, I'd rather have Jadeveon Clowney, but I mean, I wouldn't also rule that out too. I think we should get developmental QB in the 4th, sit behind AR Tyrod. I agree, Melvin. I think that's the perfect scenario for this team. And I think that there's some guys that I like there. I know a lot of Jet fans were pissed that they didn't go the Spencer Rattler Pro Day. Rattler's got a lot of the tools I like. I think he's going to get drafted higher than people expect. But I just have this feeling too that Rattler isn't maybe what the Jets are looking for. I mean, I'm looking at the guys too. They're trying to find really athletic quarterbacks. So I think they're looking at guys like Bo Nix. They're looking at guys, and you can make the case too that Rattler should fit in there as well. But I think that they're looking at guys to develop later in the draft. I mean, look, they're bringing in Jordan Travis. They're bringing in the kid from Tulane. I mean, there's a couple guys like you're seeing. They're targeting around 3 or 4. Spencer Rattler again. I would, Melvin, but I think the Jets have already said, like, donate to the hunger link, which I'll do if that helps get you Jadeveon Clowney. I think I gotta mix it up though. Like, I got, you know what I should do? I should send them really good pizza. I should send them the best pizza in the world. And I am going to trigger some of you in this chat right now with my next comment. I'll send them the best pizza in the world from the pizza capital of the world. I'll send New Haven pizza to New Jersey. It could be Sally's, it could be Pepe's, it could be Bar, it could be Modern. I will send the best pizza in the country and basically remind them you are just a stone throw away from great pizza. And I understand that New York has amazing pizza. Artichoke pizza is really good. Lombardi's, of course, the OG. But per capita and the quality, you're not beating New Haven. I'm sorry. You're just not beating New Haven. So, like, again, we've done the breakfast sandwich route. We've done the breakfast sandwich. Like, we gotta mix up the medicine a little bit, Melvin. Like, maybe pizza, maybe a good bagel, like from New York. Like, we gotta think of something else from the area to attract people to come here. Like, if I'm Philly, for example, I'm starting with cheesesteaks. Like, I'm doing like a cheese. If I'm recruiting an offensive lineman, I'm the Eagles. I'm basically doing like getting a cheesesteak from East Place, like, and just bringing it, doing like a cheesesteak buffet. I mean, maybe that's what they should do with Kelsey. They should go to Kelsey, basically go, hey, do you want to come out on retirement? we'll give you a, when you sign, we'll give you a cheesesteak from every cheesesteak place in Philly because you are the king. Best pizza. Yeah, Melvin, you're in Virginia. I do think there's a Pepe's in Maryland. I do think they opened one in New Jersey as well. Again, it's not it's part of their chain now. And again, it's still really good, but it's not, nothing's as good as the original. But yeah, like if you're ever in the Connecticut area, you definitely got to get that New Haven style pizza. And my favorite is I also have a favorite pizza that's a little controversial. And again, it's also funny too when people ask you, and whenever you're like on a date, that's always one of the prompts is like, you always get like that question, like, what's your favorite pizza? And most people say, well, you can't put pineapple on pizza. And look, I promise you it's not pineapple. That's not my favorite. I'm not going that direction. But I will say my favorite pizza, and again, it's weird, but once you have it, you'll agree. Like, and I brought 3 or 4 people to this place and tried this pizza, and they were unsure, and they all had the same reaction. Holy bleep, that was amazing, and I've never had pizza like that. And that is, drum roll, please, the mashed potato bacon pizza. Yes, it is a diet killer. Yes, it is a carb fest. Yes, it is calories galore. But does it hit the spot? You better freaking believe it. Yes, it's a weird combination. Yes, it's something you wouldn't think of. Yes, if you told your trainer about it, they might possibly have a hemorrhage. But it is worth it. Absolutely worth it. And I also say, like, too, if you go to New Haven, like, you gotta get a certain pie at each place. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like, you go to Bar, you gotta get the mashed potato bacon. Pepe's, it's the white clam. Sally's, it's the grandma pie. And at Modern, you gotta get the Italian pop. I mean, each place has their own. So again, if you ever need a tour guide for great pizza, I'm your guy. But we had to talk about some food here, I guess. Mike Williams, sign and dine, baby. It's the new way. I mean, breakfast sandwiches are now a recruiting tool. Colleges, take note. NIL, take note. It's all about the power of the breakfast sandwich. Because again, you can't go wrong with a good breakfast sandwich. You never can. You never can go wrong. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk today. We will be back, of course, later on with breaking Jets news throughout the offseason. And, of course, Mock Draft Monday. We have one baking in the oven right now. I put the ingredients together. It's cooking, although might have to pull it out, of course, if the Jets make another signing or trade before Monday. But that thing is sizzling. It's ready to go. It's going to be a great Mock Draft Monday. I also have my NFL one coming out for all 32 picks in the first round soon enough. But we have a lot more stuff to do. If you're a fan of the NFL draft or the New York Jets or just sports in general, give us a like, give us a subscribe, share it with all your friends. Try to get as many people in this community as we possibly can. But until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this is Rich